right, the Cash Confident Chiropractor. This is lesson 4, and it's actually one of my favorite topics to discuss. And it's a little bit of a combination of two topics, the 4 buckets of financial planning, which has been my favorite for quite a while. And then we're going to piggyback that with building your financial fortress, which has also become one of my more exciting topics to talk about because I feel like it's important. And we're going to dive into both of those. And I think this is going to really start to materialize some of the information that you've gotten from the first few lessons. And we're going to work through a checklist and a spreadsheet today, and you'll have the access to that. And you're going to really start to be able to develop part of the plan that, when we get to lesson 6 and we build out your 2026 plan, this will be a big chunk of that. Okay. And so the 4 buckets of finances, I always, whenever I teach this, I tell the story. I was in my strategic coach meeting, entrepreneur coaching group, and one of the questions, there's a lot of financial advisors in there, and someone had asked a question, as a business owner, what do you do with extra money? Like everything's kind of going well, you're doing pretty good, you got extra money. What do you do with it? And one gentleman raised his hand, stood up, and he said, "This is what I teach my clients, right? You got extra money in a month, quarter, year, whatever it is." And he laid out the 4 buckets of finances and what to do with that money. And then we're gonna dive into that to start out. And so the 4 buckets, is first one is going to be personal discretionary. Sorry, I didn't show up there on that. But the first bucket is personal discretionary. It's not your budget, right? Like I actually recently liked the idea that budgets can has a little bit of a negative connotation, but a personal financial framework or plan with it, how much we want to try to spend on groceries and kids clothes and all those things, all the essentials, right? So when I talk about personal discretionary as your first bucket, it's not your grocery bill, it's not the kids schooling, it's not the kids sports, it's not your car insurance, right? Those are going to be your just kind of your budget, right? That's what you got to spend in your personal life. What this would be is the nice things, right? The vacation you got to spend for. Maybe you want to remodel the kitchen. Maybe it's saving towards a second home. Maybe it's saving for a new car or a nice watch, whatever it is, right? I don't care. If you work hard, do well, you should be able to do some nice things in your life. And so you want to get clear on what you want to save towards or spend in your personal discretionary. And as I go through these 4 buckets, I'm gonna go through it a little bit briefly here, and then I have a whole spreadsheet that I'll dive a little bit deeper into that. Okay. And so that first bucket is your personal discretionary, and there's no order, right? I'm not putting personal discretionary ahead of debt, right? So debt is bucket 2. And so I'm not putting personal, I'm just giving you the 4 buckets, no particular order. But debt is a bucket, debt payoff, right? So obviously we got personal debt. I would put these in a particular order, right? Obviously, personal credit card debt is worse than a car loan, worse than a student loan. Student loan is probably worse than a mortgage. I would say I could probably rotate car loan and student loans, but personal debt, right? So paying off some personal debt. Then there's the business debt, right? It could be business credit cards, business line of credit, equipment loans, business loans. Maybe you bought the practice, office mortgage if you have real estate, right? So those are your debts. You get clear on that. The debt snowball, I put a question mark there because there's a couple of schools of thoughts. The Dave Ramsey thing is you pay off, like say in your personal life, if your credit card bill is $10,000 and you have a car loan of $7,000, they would say tackle the car loan because it's a lower amount. The other school of thought would be what's a good debt, what's a bad debt, right? Like a home mortgage is not a bad debt. If you got $15,000 on balance on a consumer credit card because your spending's out of control, it's a little bit worse of a debt. So obviously, then the next thing is interest rates, right? Paying off higher interest rates. So I'm not your debt expert, but you get the idea of how you pick a strategy and go for it. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So bucket 2 is going to be your debt. And then bucket three is going to be saving towards retirement. Now, when you're filling this bucket, right, our goal is to fill the buckets. It doesn't mean at 40 you're set for retirement, but are you feeling good about your contribution to retirement, right? Do you have a 401k through the practice that you're investing in and that's going well? Do you maybe have an outside investment fund that you're doing? Savings, obviously. Maybe you have a good you bought your office real estate. That's a big part of your retirement. Building a sellable business is part of your retirement. It's not going to, very rarely is a chiropractic practice sale at the end going to be set you for life for retirement, but too many chiropractors don't build a sellable practice or sellable business, and it's no part of their retirement. It could be a very healthy part of your retirement, and so that's something that we'll want to consider. And as we, get to lesson five and we talk about reinvesting into your business, some of that will be building a sellable business. Okay, so that's bucket three, retirement, and then bucket four is going to be your business professional development, right? So reinvesting back into the business, as I said, that'll be lesson five. Reinvesting in yourself professionally, like coaching, right? We coach a lot of chiropractors. I've been coached for the last 15 years. Always have a coach, a lot of times two coaches. I'm always looking to get better, and it's definitely been an investment in money and time and getting out of my comfort zone, but it's been something that without it, I would not be where I'm at now. And so, reinvesting into yourself professionally to understand business and marketing and practice growth, finances, communication. Obviously, you signed up for this course. That was a level of reinvesting in yourself professionally. Okay. Buying your office space would be reinvesting equipment, right? Buying that laser or shockwave, that's going to be reinvesting in your business. And then lastly, technique trainings, right? Getting better, reinvesting in yourself professionally and in your techniques, that's going to be a bucket as well. So those are the four buckets of finances, all right? And let's uh let's go to our trusty spreadsheet here. So let me change the sharing here. Perfect. Okay, let's make sure that that's popping up. Good. Here it is. So you'll have access to this spreadsheet. Again, as I'm going to recommend, is you're getting a handful of spreadsheets throughout the lessons, is you can just make it one spreadsheet. So you got a top, a tab of four buckets. This could be added to the spreadsheet we gave you in lesson two, right? With Holly, and there's a big spreadsheet there. And so you can add this as well. And so what I recommend is you sit down with your significant other and you lay out what the four buckets are in your life. Okay. So you're feeling pretty good about it. When I talk about building a financial fortress, I'm going to kind of weave in and out of between this four buckets and the financial fortress. So you'll get the idea. But I love the Yogi Bear saying, if you don't know where you're going, you'll end up somewhere else. He's got a lot of good ones. And that's just so apropos for what we deal with as business owners is there's a lot of lack of planning of the money. And then when things go good, there's no planning. When things go bad, there's no planning. You get stuck in tough spots. Um, but if you have a strategy, yeah, like maybe you're, saving for something personal discretionary for I don't know, a watch, and then, something happened and you lost some money in the business, you got money over there and you can move it, right? Maybe it's not time to get the watch. You had 3,000 saved up for it, but you decided that's probably not a good idea. Cool. It's not written in stone, but if you have a plan, um, the chances of you getting there is much, much better, right? And so what I like to do is, set a vision for your family, with your significant other on, 5-year goals. And then you can tease it down into one. I would start with the five. So, like you and your significant other saying is like, oh, I'd love to have a new kitchen. Would love to be able to take that European vacation. Cars getting old, like, so you would write down your goals. But I'm just going to, for the sake of argument, going to write down, um, buying a second home. All right. Yeah. Okay. So that'd be your 5-year goal. And then you would say, okay, what's a 1-year goal? Maybe it's, what, want to get new car. Okay, you need a down payment of 5K. I'm just going to say that. Right. And then you could just say, okay, what beginning today, like so 90 days, what do we need to start doing? Maybe it's opening up a sinking fund in your personal life, right? So open sinking fund. So now in your personal life, you're moving money from your checking account into a sinking fund for buying that second home, right? Okay. And Christine talked about the sinking fund in lesson three, so you should know what that is, right? So that's your, jot down. There might be four things you pop on here. There might be none, depending on the stage of your life. You and your, significant other might be like, you know what, we're all in on the business stuff. We don't need it. We got our home. We don't need. It could be, just we're going to go all in on the other stuff. We're pretty good for the next 5 years on things, and we're going to go on. But you get the idea. So jot down between you and I, and just start out with just like all the things you really legitimately would desire that you legitimately think would be reasonable in the next 5 years or 1 year, and go from there. Okay, so pretty simple. I would jot down all of um, your credit card debt on here. So like on a separate piece of paper, you could even use this. You can come over here and write them down. I don't care what you do, but let's just say you got a 90-day. I'm going to come down here. You got a 90-day pay off the 3K consumer credit card, right? Decide as a family that's what you want to do for sure. Let's say 5 years goal is pay down business line of credit. Let's say you took a $30,000 line of credit for something, equipment, whatever, do that. 1 year goal, pay off Shockwave unit. Okay. So, and again, you can go over here and just jot down all your debts to get it. I don't care where you do that. And then you might not have, like, let's say you own your home and that's a debt. It might not be on here. Like you can write it over here. That's one of our debts, but we're not worried about paying it off in 5 years or 1 year. So it's not going to go on the plan here. Not worried about it. Okay. Not worried about it. And so you get clear on your debt reduction, uh, retirement. Okay. Retirement investing. You could set a goal, like let's say you're 35 years old now, and you could say, I'd love to have, you know, 500K in investment fund. Maybe you have a couple 100,000 already in there, whatever, by age 40. All right. So 5 year goal. Maybe a 1 year goal is open 401K in the business. Right? Um, so, yeah, and that could be something you might say for here, open sinking fund to start saving for 20% down on office real estate. Okay. And maybe that could be a 5 year goal. It could be longer, it could be a 10 year goal. I could change this 500K investment fund or I could add it. And I could do a second one and say, have down payment for office real estate. Yep. A 90-day one could just be maybe you don't have anything going yet, right? Um, Open investment fund and start with 5K, right? And then contribute monthly to it. So you want to get clear on what you want to do here. This is again with your significant other, just some ideas. You'll see in one of the action items, I highly recommend at some point having an advisor of some sort to help you out with at least a financial plan. If you don't decide to have like an advisor that invests money into a stock market for you, that's fine. There's a difference between a financial planner and a financial advisor. Sometimes they're both. I have both. But a planner can definitely start to give you, as it says, a plan. But we want to start checking off the box of how we're feeling good about retirement investing. Again, this doesn't mean you're set for retirement. It means you are filling that bucket and feeling good about it in the long term. And then you got your business professional development. Again, you would do the same thing. I'm going to pull that down. And then what you do is whatever you jot down there, I'm just, let's say, beginning today, going to sign up for coaching. Spell coaching, right? Good. Can't even do that. 1 year goal is going to be buy a shockwave unit. Good. 5 year goal is buy office real estate. Okay, good. So you jot down all the things you'd love to do, reinvesting in yourself professionally. Again, this isn't your operating expense budget in your business. These are things that you have that you want to improve yourself. Again, it could be get ART certified in 1 year. You get the idea. Things cost money. I would start to try to get an idea. When you do this, you could be a little more clear, right? So I had some of them I did like 5,000, but pay down business line of credit of $20,000, pay off shock unit of $7,000. Like, write the numbers down. You know your numbers. I'm not going to sit here and get in the weeds on numbers, but I would recommend you do that. Then you got all the things up here. You and your significant other have worked through this, or if it's just you got them all on there. And forever, like there's just no right or wrong answers on what the priority you put in is. But what I would do is get the priorities on here for personal within here. And then you come down and you say, okay, what's our priority list out of all of them? You say, you know what? Number one is let's pay off the 5K credit card, personal credit card, right? Let's just get that done. Okay. Let's start a 1K per month investment into retirement. Good. Let's get that done. Open sinking fund and put any extra money. Remember we talked about the basement and the ceiling. Sometimes you might just come into extra money more than, something that's just like a 1K a month in investment fund. It's like, oh yeah, we had extra $12,000 after Q1. Awesome. What do I do with it? You can then tease that out, right? You could take that 12,000, let's say open seeking fund and put extra money towards office real estate. Okay. You could take all 12 and say, okay, I'm going to pay off five and I got 7,000 left. I'm gonna put the 7,000 in the sinking fund earmarked for my office real estate, right? So it doesn't mean you have to, some of these you can tackle monthly, right? You say, okay, you know what? I'm going to tackle the retirement thing, 1K a month. I'm going to pay off that credit card 1K a month. You could do it in installment type, right? That you have, or you could wait quarterly and say, okay, we've got 15,000 of profit, and then as Greg Crabtree talks about, and we'll talk about that again in lesson 5 on reinvesting in your business. You might have a plan of taking all your quarterly profits and putting it and saving it for the office real estate. Maybe you have to hyper warp speed that, right? And that's, part of what you got to figure out with what you want to do. But this is the 4 buckets of finance and getting really clear on what your game plan is with this. And, you revisit it quarterly, yearly, at the end of each year, have this meeting, see how you guys did on this, change it up, adjust it, but have a plan, have a plan. It's like, okay, we're going to put all the extra money to credit card once that's tackled. I've got 1K a month going investment fund. Perfect. When I've got quarterly extra money, or if like, let's say you set the ceiling in your operating account to 20,000. If it ever gets above 20, you move that money over. And maybe you say, any extra money is going right towards that sinking fund for real estate. And then when you've tackled that, you kind of, sometimes you might say, you know what, let's say buy shockwave unit. That could be something where you just say, you know what, with down payment and then equipment loan, right? And so then you got the equipment loan and you earmark the debt of the equipment loan up there. And then you just say, you know what, I'm not worried about paying it off. I'm just going to, it's 500 a month. That doesn't impact my cash flow. I'm making 5,000 a month off the Shockwave. I really like that ROI. Every month I'm paying 500 to make 5,000. I can do that. I'm not worried about paying it off. So then, you don't worry about that at all. And it's not on your plan of debt reduction. Okay. And so that's the 4 buckets. Get really clear on that. Again, we'll have a Zoom Q&A if you have any questions on it, but this is one of the best exercises you can do to start planning your money. Let me just stop share for a second on there. I just want to reiterate how important that is to get clear on where you need to put the extra money. And as we talked about in the previous, like on cash flow, you got the ceiling in the basement, right? So if you've got, 10,000 is your basement in your operating account and 20,000 is your ceiling, you don't want it to go below 10. If it goes above 20, you work that money, you move that money, you do something with it. Too often people don't do that and they spend kind of willy-nilly. If you get really clear here on what your family plan is on spending extra money, then it really helps out. And you have a level of peace of mind in your money that you're making a lot of progress, right? And so if you've got, $5,000 extra money and you pay off 3,000 a credit card and that's tackle, boom, you take 2,000, you put it into an investment fund, you're just feeling good. You're working that money that you're making and you feel like you're really making progress in your life. So I wanted to just make sure that we're super clear on that. It's just very, very important. So let me go back to our presentation here. Um, Perfect. So we did that. Now we're going to help build your financial fortress. I was listening to a podcast a couple years ago, and the guy was talking about this, and he just said, he was probably in his 50s, right? And he just said the number one thing that my goal is building a financial fortress around my family. And he's like very blunt about it. He's like, whether I'm alive or dead, my family is protected financially. Obviously, there can be some black swan events that are knee buckling, but it would take a whole lot, this gentleman said, to take down his family financially. And I feel that way now at 46. I feel blessed that I've built a pretty good. We're not completely, perfect in our finances, but there's a pretty solid foundation and financial fortress around family. Again, whether I'm alive or if something's tragic happened and I passed away, and so I want to help you get a game plan for building your financial fortress. And, if you're 25 years old, that's going to look a lot different than if you're 45 years old. If you have no kids and you're not married, a lot different than when you're married with kids and or just different stages of your life. I mean, there's just a lot of things. So again, I'm going to give you the tools to start helping make those decisions for you, but I don't have all the answers, but can definitely give you a lot of tools. Okay, so let's go here. Good. And I'm just going to move this document here. Should be good. Let me reshare. All right. Got it. Cool. Again, I'm not saying everything we discuss is necessarily good for you, and I'm not a financial advisor, but this is what you got to start looking at, right? I've worked with my advisor and done a lot of things, but when you're alive, you want to have liquidity protection, right? So you can use it as a checklist to see where you're at. Is your personal operating checking account healthy? This is your personal life. Are you doing pretty good there, right? Maybe you can check that box off. Do you have a personal sinking fund where maybe you've got healthcare costs in there? Maybe you got a few $1,000s in case something happens to the kids, right? Do you have a sinking fund for home repairs? If you have a house that's worth $500,000, they always say it's like 10% of what your house is what you're going to spend each year in home maintenance and repairs, right? So do you have $5,000 tucked away there? That's a level of protection. Do you have money for auto repairs if needed? If it's something like if I said it's going to cost you $1,500 because something on your car like tires or whatever, could you handle that? And if not, you better be saving for it and have money in there for that. So just a personal sinking fund is really going to be helpful. Okay. And now there's not gonna, like I'm not going to put things in here like personal sinking fund for vacation, right? That's a sinking fund and it would be earmarked for that, but that's not necessarily like part of your financial fortress. Things that take people down financially are healthcare costs, as we know, really bad home repair situations, auto stuff, things like that. So that's the essence of this. Personal savings, right? Do you have an emergency savings, retirement investment, savings investment account? That, how many months? Do you want 2 months in your personal life? So what are you looking at as personal savings? That's important. Now, if you're a small business owner and you got, 2 months of business emergency savings, and you got a month in your personal life and you're really solid in your business, then you're probably in a pretty good shape. You'll hear some people like with that have jobs, and Dave Ramsey will say like 6 months of personal savings. The more the merrier. If you had 3 months and then you also had investment money that you could get to if shit really hits the fan, and there's other things you can do as well, but obviously a personal savings is going to be important. Then we get to the business operating. We talked about this, right? Are you maintaining that minimum and maximum in your operating account? That's going to give you a level of financial protection. Is your practice at least 15% profitable? Again, with paying yourself full salary and such, the more the merrier on profit. But if it is if it's profitable, that's a level of protection. When we run out of, when we're not profitable, that's risky, right? We've talked about business sinking funds. Okay, business sinking funds are going to help you. Business emergency savings. Greg Crabtree, Christine Odell both say have 2 months of your operating expenses in a business emergency savings. So that would be important. Then we come down, depending on your relationship with debt or credit, it does act as a buffer. There's no doubt about it. A business credit card, personal credit card, those do. Don't 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 get in bad habits with that. A business line of credit, right? Greg Crabtree talks about a healthy business is when you've got 15% profit at least, you've got 2 months of emergency cash, and you got an unused line of credit. That's a very stable business. Okay, so let's get there. Let's stabilize the business. And an unused line of credit in your business can be very helpful. Manageable debt is a safety net, right? There's unmanageable debt and there's manageable debt. So keeping yourself in manageable debt is going to be building a financial fortress. If the debt starts to get out of hand, that's when the house of cards can fall down. So keep your debt manageable. On the real estate side of things, right, you can get a home equity line of credit for your home. And again, try to keep it either unused or manageable for strategic things, right? And so if like, I don't know, something that goes awry and you have $10,000 repair something in your house and you don't have $10,000, but you got a $30,000 HELOC, like, yeah, you probably got to use it, right? If it's the case, and it's not going to take you down. Okay. So a HELOC is a level of protection. Again, I recognize like everybody's got a different relationship to debt. And so I am not here to say put yourself into debt, but if you've got unused access to debt, it is a level of protection. Business real estate, this would be like a last case scenario. So, for instance, I own my office real estate. I've got a lot of equity in it. I was fortunate enough I bought it 12 years ago in an area that has really skyrocketed. So, I have a lot of equity in it. I would not want to refinance it because I got a low interest rate. So if I were to refinance it now, I did refinance it back when I went from a higher interest rate to a lower one, and that worked out. But now I would not want to because I'd go in a higher interest rate. But if like shit really hit the fan, like just absolutely had no other options, I could refinance my office and take some equity out and stabilize our situation. Again, last resort, but it's there. When you own your office real estate and your home, it's a level of protection. Again, it's not ideal to do that, but it's just a level of protection. I'm trying to put as many layers, healthy, good layers, like insurances and money, um, into like, okay, shit's really at the fan. I got options. Not fun, not great, but here we are. Next is going to be insurance, right? Your health insurances, maybe an HSA, long-term disability insurance, short-term, Aflac, like you get hurt and they will supplement you there. So that's pretty cool. Look into that. business interruption insurance. Something happens. Some things like I think NCMIC, if you're a member of them, they have that. So you could ask them. They also have like an audit insurance thing. Like if you get audited by insurances, and insurance wants $25,000 back from you for whatever reason, there is an insurance policy as well. Check with NCMIC. So that's pretty cool. Your health is keeping your health is going to be a layer of protection for your family and financial fortress. And then I always put this in here, work ethic and always making your future bigger than your past. That's a Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach quote. Always make your future bigger than your past. If you can really maintain this over years, you are going to inherently have a level of financial protection there. Okay. Now, the untimely death. No one likes to talk about it, but it just really is the reality of life as we know. And so you want to be able to protect your family if something were to happen. There's nothing worse than your family grieving for you and being in a bad financial situation now. So life insurances in your personal life, work with an advisor on that, but make sure you are well funded. If you're relatively young and healthy, it's not expensive, but you want to be very well funded, right? If you were to pass away at 45, there's going to be a lot of money that's needed for a long period of time in your family. Key person policy in your business. So I have a $1 million policy for my practice. So and my practice pays for it. It's like $600 a year. And if I pass away, $1 million would go into my operating account for my business and keep it running, paying people and operating, give my wife time to grieve. She's got people in my life that are trusted advisors she could work with to then sell the practice. I would have to sell the office real estate, but there'd be plenty of money to keep the thing operating. And then whatever's left with that would then also go and supplement my family. Okay. Will and trust, really smart to do that. I'm not going to dive into the details, but will and trust is really good. 529C, good for your kids for college. It just protects the situation. And when they go to college, you got money for it already, and you're not draining your personal life or whatever for that. It's again, you wouldn't want to do it, but if you got money in there and you needed a few $1,000s, there's a big penalty, but that's a big backup. Have a team of advisors, right? And I have a team of advisors and a document that I wrote out. It's like, okay, I pass away, my wife contacts our attorney, our financial planner, accountant, and then we're working together. You know, practice sales consultant, like all the different things to get that going. And so we have that. And then what is your business plan? If you do pass, right? So who's running the practice? You have an associate, who's taking over the office man, like just have a business plan for that. And if I don't expect you to have all these, but the more you can check off, the better, and really start to plan this out. And again, it takes time. I don't have all these checked off. I'm doing really well. I feel really good about if I whether I live or die, I feel really good about our security. Okay. I go through different other things with finances, owning three businesses and real estate and all that. There's always ups and downs and stuff, but from this, it would take a whole lot to knock us out. But there's certain things I'm still trying to get to and improve. So we're all a work in progress, but if you map this out and have a plan, it'll be really beneficial for you. So going back to our lesson there, good. So your resources are your four buckets of spreadsheet that I gave you, this financial fortress checklist, and get a financial advisor planner or start talking to yours. The action plan is sit down with significant other and build out your four buckets of finance. I want you to perform the financial fortress checklist. List the 5 things on the financial fortress you want to get done in 2026. Maybe it's more, but let's get 5 things. If you got to up your life insurance policy, get a key person in policy, open a line of credit, start, I got 1 month emergency saving. Let's chip in a couple thousand a month to get to 2 months, right? Like, what's your plan to get to that financial fortress? And then lastly, meet with a financial advisor if needed. Okay. Our next lesson is going to be about reinvesting in your business. So we'll tackle that bucket four a little bit more in lesson five. So hope that was helpful. And again, we'll have a Q&A on any questions you have on that. Jot down some notes, but this is going to be a meaty one for your 2026 planning.